thoughtful about who we partner with to ensure that, the expectation of us is the same expectation that we have of those that we do business with. Again, as a public entity, I would expect our customers to expect us to do the right thing in that regard.
Thank you for that question. I know that was more a question directed to CPS, but if any of y'all have any thoughts that you'd like to add.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing onto that, right? Which is, if we take advantage of some of these kind of production tax credit-like opportunities out there, what if we took some of those savings and put them away into a fund, like a responsible, cradle-to-grave fund, right? So we were talking about manufacturing, right? If we manufacture solar panels domestically, we get an extra 10% credit for that. So what if we took that and put it into, a cradle-to-grave fund so that we ensured responsible disposal of those, those assets at the end of their life?
Can I ask you to explain cradle to grave? Because it's really cool, actually.
Yeah, so just looking at the entire life cycle of, a solar panel, right? As Mr. Kaiser was just telling us that they are already doing, right? The idea with a fund at the beginning, right, would be, that we have the money in place, right, so that no matter what happens in the future, the money is there, it's in an account. It will allow us to pay for responsible disposal, deconstruction, disposal, remediation of the land, right, and, the term, sorry for the jargon, cradle to grave, meaning, from the building of the equipment all the way until its final usage, dismantling, and restoring back to a natural state, right, of the land.
Thank you very much for that. Next question. And I'll just say, if you see me typing on my phone, it's because I'm taking notes. That's how I process information. Molly, yes, and then I saw it behind me.
What about other methods to help our climate crisis, such as halting the destruction of the tree canopies citywide or at parks like what the city of San Antonio is planning on doing at Breckenridge Park? Our air quality at moderate non-attainment is not getting any better. It's getting severe and more severe. And the city mayor's office and city council is not putting a stop at the elimination of Breckenridge Park trees. The trees may be a small part of mitigation, of course, but it's something that EPA will be regulating.
I'm not sure if Councilman Sandoval is still here.
But other representatives are here.
Well, yeah, so I was literally at a meeting on a number of climate initiatives with the city today and where CPS Energy might play a role. I think you're going to hear more in the very near future. There's a presentation at council at B session on December 14th, where they're going to be talking about their tree canopy policy with the city. What I can't, and CPS Energy, I think, plays a role in that. There's a big effort right now to create an arboretum in San Antonio, which, obviously, I think would be a great thing for our community. We've got one of the largest tree programs in the city. We give away, thousands of trees a year, and I know the city's got, I think, $5 or $6 million that they have available for, canopy programs as well that they're trying to actually get going. So I do think our community is focused on this as an opportunity. I have my own board members at CPS Energy asking, hey, can we do carbon, what they're calling kind of carbon sinks where, that's why we're interested in maybe partnering with the potential Arboretum project, because the more trees we plant, the more, carbon dioxide we get out of the air. So it's something I'm personally and we're supportive of at CPS Energy. And I feel like, based on what I heard today, I think the city has got a pretty good plan.
Are they going to be replacing them with the same size trees that they're going to be eliminating?
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the conversation that's going to happen here in the near
Did
future.
you want to let them respond since all three of them are here?
I can respond. Molly, I know that you've been. Sure. Molly, I know that you've been an active stakeholder in the conversation on Breckenridge Park. So something I do want to mention is that the resiliency fund that Councilwoman Sandoval initiated and is now part of the budgeting process is that there's going to be money dedicated to reduce the urban heat island effect. So that includes increasing the tree canopy, especially in the urban core. As to your specific question on Breckenridge Park, I think that would be a question directed to the city department, which would be Parks and Recreation.
Just as a follow-up question to that, does anybody know, either folks that participated in the climate action adaptation plan or other, community efforts within the city, is, are trees something that the CAP looks at? Or is there any kind of climate accountability in, for example, the park's decision around tree canopy in Breckenridge Park? Just if anybody has that information.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
I guess it's a sort of a two-part question. One is, in the CAP, in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that the city developed, does it look at tree canopy or carbon sinks, that would be related to trees? Is that part of that plan? And then I guess the second part of the question is whether, the Parks Department has any sort of climate accountability built into decisions that they're currently making around tree cover in Breckenridge Park. Meredith. Oh, sorry.
Marisol, yes, so the way that the mitigation strategy is labeled in there is to increase biodiversity, and so it does address, not just tree canopy, but everything. And I know that Doug's not here today, but they do meet with all of the heads of the departments in the city, so including Parks and Rec. And I believe that they're developing different goals for each department and working with them directly to see how all of their projects either help or if they need to start looking at the cap of their different projects. But yeah, it is in there.
You said that there was going to be a December 14th meeting? Where is that at?
I'm Mary McGuire. I was on the Water and Natural Resources Committee and the CAP initial preparations. And we definitely talked a lot about these connections. I don't know what happened to it after the Chamber of Commerce took over, so they may have eliminated a lot of what we proposed, but I'm glad to hear that a lot of those things are moving forward now.
The last thing I want to add related to the climate action and adaptation plan is that, we've instituted, or City Council has instituted two committees that are filled by residents and appointed by council, and that's the Equity Committee. I'm always part of that Equity Committee and also a technical committee as well. And so when it comes to talking about equity, we do have these citizen-led, resident-led committees that are thinking about these issues, and I know that has been a discussion in the committees. The last thing on Breckenridge, Molly, is, in the grand scheme of things, these are very, very sensitive trees because they're heritage trees. But I know that these are not the only trees that matter to us, and so, like I mentioned, one tied back to the resiliency fund that's going to be part of the next year's budget. Reducing the urban heat island effect is going to be critical, and we can do that by increasing our tree canopy, not just at Breckenridge, but citywide.
Thank you. Just to answer that question too about Breckenridge Park. So we know the next step, the plan that it's not finished clearly, but the plan that they're proposing will go to the Texas Historic Commission next. And so that is another opportunity to plug in and say we do not approve this plan as citizens who care about our park. So I want to make it clear that yes, right now it is in City of San Antonio control, but there are opportunities further at the state level. I think it's a larger process now. We're trying to get, I spoke to Assistant City Manager David McCary, I think last week at a committee, and he said he's gonna send us the packet that they're sending to THC soon, and we can give that to anyone interested prior to it going to THC. So just letting you know, there are other opportunities to plug in, and we would love to have your support in preserving those trees and giving more feedback on that plan, because we also agree it's not the best.
I saw a hand in front.
Yeah, hey, Rudy and Aqua. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on how the rate advisory committee process is going, and also our other panelists as well. How do you guys think about kind of this public input process of looking through different portfolios, et cetera, see how CPS should proceed with, more clean energy or less or whatever. But I'm curious about your experience in the rate advisory committee. I know you guys are coming up on a decision hopefully in the next month or two. I'm really curious how you've thought about the process.
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out that tying back to the CAP committees and the climate action plan, and folks mentioning that there are committees for communities to participate in, it's really important to note that these committees are only advisory. We don't hold any real power. So what we're seeing, what's happening with the Brackenridge trees and the climate action plan was brought up, we're talking about electric vehicles right now. So just so that you know, Molly, there's a disconnect from the situations going on in real time versus what committees focus on. With regards to the rate advisory committee, I really do think that it is a very arduous process that is being super jam-packed. And so I don't think that we're taking enough time, specifically with this big charge of charting our power generation for the future. I really would like to have seen more participants submit modeling for alternatives to carbon markets, which is something that we can't really get away from. I feel like I am an outlier in the space that often speaks to situations dealing with colonization and displacements of our communities and how all that factors into what is a fossil fuel economy. I'll go off for 3 minutes on tangent and then it's just like, anyway, next person. Not saying that I don't feel heard, but these are existential situations that need to reshift and refocus. I don't think that's anything that can come from the rate advisory committee, in all honesty. But I am passionate and willing to undergo that process and do my best for my district in representing. There is an educational barrier. There's only so much technical jargon that I can take in the time. And some of these books that last one was like 100 pages plus. And you do have a glossary, but the technicality of it does leave most of us. I'm going to say most of us. And so I think that if we're to do if we're to do good by the community, I think we need a longer process. And I think that we do need to educate the RAC members. There are some farces and some flat out lies that are perpetuated and expressed on the RAC, and that's just something that, how do we combat that ignorance is quite difficult. And looking to Rudy to see if that process can change. I mean, why are we moving so fast? I know that there is a timeline, but specifically the meetings, especially meetings that are set up via Zoom or WebEx, I think just don't fully capture the best scenario for us to educate ourselves and to move forward.
So, I know the RAC has been frustrated, with just the amount of information that we have to kind of try to educate the RAC on so they feel like they're making an informed decision. I hear you. We started this conversation off tonight with the clock is ticking, right? So for me, if I have to shut down my coal operation to move to something else, whatever that something else is, I've got to start building that today if I'm gonna be able to rely on it 3, 4, 5 years down the road, if we're gonna move away from Spruce 2 as a coal unit to whatever else we're gonna replace it with, then I've got to start ordering equipment and turbines and things that, will allow me to keep our system reliable, because if we shut down every plant we had and we bought all our power on the market, there's only so much power to be bought, right? The direction that the board gave us on, we're going to do a public process and we're going to set up a rate advisory committee to facilitate that public process. You're right, there are 21 people on that rate advisory committee with 21 different opinions, and they, from the far left to the far right and everything in between. People believe what they believe, and that's kind of the nature of our society today, right? So we're trying to balance all that. We're trying to not influence outcomes and present you with information so we can get, kind of unencumbered feedback, so that I can go and present it to my board and say, look, here's what the community said, that they, the road they want us to go down, which is, in our own right, an integrated resource planning process. We're not good at it. First time we've ever tried to do it this way. So, we're doing the best we can. My team, we're working hard and we're putting in a lot of hours outside of, the things that we do to just keep, the lights on. But we're trying our best to provide you with an ability to make an informed decision. But the clock is ticking. I have to get some of these decisions made in order to move forward so that, I can execute on that. All I want to do is run this utility company in a manner that our community can feel good about. That where you feel and Reed and everybody else on the rate advisory committee and my 900,000 customers feel like CPS Energy is listening. We haven't been in that place, quite frankly, for a lot of years now, and we're trying to pivot that direction, but it's a transformation that's not easy. And I think, in spite of the frustration, I think the rate advisory committee is doing a really great job at trying to get there. I know it's hard. It's not easy. I've got an electrical engineering degree, and I know our team gets technical. But I think y'all are giving it a really good go, and I appreciate that.
Do you have a response to his presentation on fracked gas?
Just a sec, I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask a question that hasn't already. Yes.
Hi, my name is Valerie Morales. I'm a community organizer, and I have been for about probably more than 15 years. So we talked about how everybody's going at and doing the best that they can, but I'm really concerned about the community, the people that are being directly affected by the contamination that's being distributed on the southeast side of town directly around Lake Calaveras Lake. Around some of the work that I've been doing recently, actually, they individually, 2 different fishermen informed me. One used to work for the city. He works through a fishing program now. He said a bunch of his fishing buddies are ending up with lung cancer. They're not smokers. They're just happen to be fishing in that area. And also to another separate fisherman who mentioned that they knew something was going on because the fish that were pulling out of the lake were turning up tarry black in the inside when they would open them up. So he doesn't eat the fish, but he is aware that it has been going on for a while, had been requesting tests be done on the lake for years, he said. I guess it was happening during COVID. So this is something ongoing and very concerning to me. And I feel like it's being downplayed or not mentioned at all. And I'm really concerned with that narrative because it pretty much glosses over the people that are being directly impacted by the decisions that are being made by people in charge. Thank you.
I guess my response to that would be that, we do water testing in Calaveras, constantly. We test the fish, we do all the things that, the community would expect of us in being an operator on that lake. So, to the extent people are pulling fish out and, have questions, I would tell you, let us know. I mean, call us and, we'll work through that. I have not seen any evidence of that, but I'm not saying anybody's lying. All I'm saying is nobody's come to us with, that information. I will tell you that, our coal plants, they're permitted. They're permitted by the Environmental Protection Agency. They're permitted by TCEQ. Spruce 2 in particular has every, environmental protection equipment on it that we can possibly put on it. But community, when they made the decision in 2004-5 to build Spruce 2 in particular, Spruce 1 in the 90s, and now we're talking about moving away from it. And as a community-owned utility, that is our job, is to take feedback on how you want us, to provide the power that you need and, figure out how to make that work. And that's where we are. But I can promise you that, we're operating all of our plants within the permit limits that, we're given by the environmental, regulatory agencies, and we're doing the best job to be good stewards of our environment and those assets, within those permit limits. And, so I appreciate, again, we're here to listen, and, it's a conversation we've had about ensuring that, we're doing the fish testing and we're doing things that, that give our community comfort that we're paying attention to those issues.
Can I ask, real quick, just if there's a specific department or number that people can call to report things like that?
Yeah. So, we'll get you that information, but we've got an environmental director, Carmen's part of that team, and those are the folks who would look into that, so.
Yeah.
And then I just have to say, there is monitoring that is done, and it is showing violations of federal pollution limits. And I got to refer you here to a report by the Environmental Integrity Project. I just pulled it up. You can go to ashtracker.org. You can go there right now and search for Calaveras. There are 21 groundwater monitoring wells around the Spruce plant, and 20 of them have monitored for pollution above federal advisory levels for pollutants like lithium, cobalt, sulfate, radium, boron. The data is there. It is publicly available, ashtracker.org. Go check it out. It is 2016 through 2019. We have been looking at the data from the last couple of years beyond 2019, and it's not any different.
I guess my only response to that would be, we've gotten no violations from the Environmental Protection Agency or anybody else for exceeding some limits. So again, if we did, I would tell you we did, but we haven't, so.
Yeah, so these are advisory levels. It's not going to trigger a corrective action, but it's an advisory for pollutants that are associated with all sorts of negative health outcomes, including cancer.
Michael, can I make a quick comment? Just a quick clarification. When the Spruce Coal Plants were built, I just want to caution around which community approved that project, because the climate justice community was staunchly against it. I know there were some environmentalists, white environmentalists specifically, who were okay with the Spruce Coal Plant in exchange for 1,000 trees or 100 trees, I don't know how many. So climate justice specifically community, I would say they were staunchly against, they were not listened to, and so here we are talking about the Spruce Coal Plant.
All right, seeing Barbara's hand up. Did you still have a question?
I was wanting to ask something from CPS. Frankly, I find it hard to get into CPS. Both SAW and CPS are really hard to get into unless you stay on the phone and keep asking a lot of different people. They finally feel sorry for you and they find the person that needs to hear it. I just wanted to let you know that. But also, during the debacle we had energy-wise a few years ago, one thing I noticed was that these large high-rise office buildings up and down Broadway were lit up. And so is that one of the things that the councilman was talking about, some way to, do they have a right to do that and so you can't cut them off? Or do they need to keep something warm? I mean, they were even empty most at the time. So is there something we don't understand about that conservation piece?
Yeah, so going back to Yuri, again, number one, while you plan for, you kind of plan for the worst event you've ever experienced, and we, as a state, we never experienced that particular scenario where we had across the state 20,000 megawatts of power offline, and it being, in the teens across the entire state into Mexico. Again, it was a very, very unusual event. We have a conservation, we have what we call a demand response program, where we actually pay customers to come offline when we need the power. And that's a percentage of customers, I don't know, we've got one of the biggest programs in the state, it's like 200 megawatts. Includes residential, that we can actually allow us to move their thermostats up a few degrees to get some power back so we can redirect. The downtown system is a very technical, it's a lot different from any other part of our community because you've got like triple redundancy. So, you don't turn off that system because to get it back on is almost, it's really, really difficult. Well, since that event and during that event even, we had a whole team under Deanna's area that was calling folks saying, hey, we need you to turn off your lights, we need you to flip breakers. UTSA had their intramural field was on, and I got a call from Senator Menendez, hey, you need to get on, UTSA. We asked them to turn their lights off. So it was a very voluntary, situation in that moment where we were trying to get businesses to turn their lights off because at the end of the day, we were in a state, emergency where, even if we wanted to bring it back on, we couldn't because the state was forcing us to manage the outages to try to keep the system from failing, which across the state, which it almost did. So today, we've got a much more robust program. We've had time now to talk to customers about, hey, we've got a kind of an energy partners program now, where we'll give them notice if everybody who in here gets their their emails or text messages when weather's coming. We have, both residential and commercial versions of that, and we can tell our customers, hey, it's going to be really cold. Why don't you turn your parking lot garage lights off, or whatever the case might be. They all have most of the downtown office buildings have energy management systems. They can actually control that if we give them a heads up that we're going to need it, because not everybody participates in that formal demand response program. So I think we've come a long way. I think we have the 200 megawatts of formal demand response, and I think we got somewhere in the neighborhood of another 150 megawatts of voluntary reduction, and all of that helps. So I feel better that our customers are paying more attention, primarily because we've worked harder to communicate with them when we think there might be an emergency. But again, that was such an unprecedented event that it exposed a lot of opportunities we had to get better, and we've tried to do the work to make that happen.
I think in the back I haven't seen you ask a question.
Could y'all speak to the IRA a bit more? Because I agree with Adrian what he said earlier, that this seems like a very good opportunity for public utilities nationwide and CPS. So can we hear a bit more about the opportunities of the IRA, and also if CPS is fully, looking at the IRA, what they can pull from the IRA to decarbonize our system?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that was said. The IRA, we are organizing. Kathy Garcia, my federal and state, VP who handles our policy work, with Jonathan Tijerina, who's our VP over, technology. We've got a group that we pulled together that includes, consultants at the federal level that are going to help us chase that money. A lot of that money, there's two, I forget the second acronym, IILA, is that it? IIJA and the IRA. There's an infrastructure program and there's the Inflation Reduction Act program. And both of those are going to provide opportunities for CPS Energy long term. Today I was talking about being at the city. The city and CPS Energy are coming together. We're going to work on this together to try to chase every real opportunity there is. And, you know, right now, the federal guidance is still being worked on. So, you know, we're, in a couple of weeks, we're going to try to go up to DC together and actually go meet with the DOE and folks that are going to be making this decision so that we're on the front end of that. But I feel we're probably more prepared than a lot of communities, but every utility in the country, including the, you know, the petrochemical companies that want to move over to hydrogen, they're going to be chasing hydrogen dollars as well. There's going to be a lot of competition, but I feel like there's going to be opportunities specifically with the DOE and the Department of Defense, who, you know, we're Military City USA. We've got a lot of irons in the fire with the Department of Defense on pilot opportunities because they want to become more resilient to protect their missions and, you know, to do what they need to do, and we're going to partner with them on that. And there's federal dollars to do that. So, yes, to all of the above, you can, you know, you can be assured that CPS Energy is gonna be in line to try to put our best foot forward and bring some of those dollars home. Hey, the great thing about the IRA in particular is before we had to partner with, you know, to get the best price on solar and wind for that matter. Now we're actually going to invest and we're kind of transition, you know, some of our employees that right now work on fossil fuel based plants over into the renewable space, you know, so that we can start to learn and grow in that regard. So I would expect us to own some solar facilities in the near future.
And if I could just say a little more, didn't get there in my first 2 minutes, right? But a little more about the credit program that is similar to the production tax credit. This is for investment in clean energy. To start off, there is a 30% credit, right? For qualifying programs, right? Capital investment in renewable energy, so solar, wind, battery storage, a couple of other types of sources. 30% right there, right? There's an additional 10%, as I mentioned earlier, if it's manufactured domestically, so U.S. Steel. There's an additional 10% if it is done in what is called an energy community. And this is a community that has significant employment in the energy industry, but also has unemployment above the national average. And the community around Calaveras qualifies for all of that. So we could get at least 50% of the cost of capital investment in renewable energy projects in the Calaveras area paid for by the federal government. And I also was not able to say earlier, but I got to thank my colleagues at Sierra Club and Emma Pabst, who I'm subbing for. She could not be here tonight, but I got to thank them for all of that research. And then the last thing I will say is that the state is taking a very dim view of these opportunities. It may not surprise you to learn that there are some folks in state leadership that consider acceptance of federal funds to be a mark against them. And so we need to pay attention to what is coming out of the comptroller's office, for example, and state leadership about all of these opportunities. They belong with the local entities that understand what great opportunities they are. They belong with CPS, with San Antonio, and so that's all I'll say.
All right, I see, yes, one person I haven't seen before. And then if there's nobody else that hasn't asked a question yet, then I'll move on to folks that have asked a question. So
hi, my name is Sophie's boyfriend. So I grew up in San Antonio, and there's learned behaviors, and I wasn't going to come to this meeting, I came with her, but something I noticed since I lived overseas and came back here, specifically living in Germany, is, and I saw somebody doing it when I walked in here, leaving people's cars idling when they're sitting in there. I got it if it's 105 out, or if it's like 30 degrees, but we get in that habit. It's a learned habit here, growing up here, because fuel is cheap. And we just leave our cars running, and that's another thing you can do as an individual and tell your friends to stop doing. Quit leaving your car. It's really a question for the panel. It's just more of a comment on learned behavior growing up here in the States and keeping our cars idling when we don't need to. It's actually illegal in Germany.
Who was it? Let's find out.
On Ozone Action Days, I will say that's actually in our messaging when we tell people what they can do on Ozone Action Day is to not idle. So I will say that we try really hard to educate our customers in that regard.
yes. is your name?
Okay, I'll pass it to Meredith and then to head on.
Yes, I saw,
Okay, I'm with you on that because I lived in the East Coast and when it was cold, like you would go to the store and they would not have the heater on. You go to HEB and they have the heater on full blast, so I guess that would be something that we could work on. This goes to Rudy, is what does your community engagement plan look like? Because I would like to see more people at these conversations that we're having, and I'll pass it to the next person.
Again, I would say that I think we heard the message loud and clear that we've got to do a better job communicating with our customers. I've talked about the emails and the information we try to send out because we want our customers to in advance if they have a plan that they need to employ to get somewhere safe or to go stay with a family member, they know rain's coming, so they want to get home, and not be out on the streets. We're trying to provide them. We haven't hired a meteorologist, and it's been great because we've got as much information as we've ever had now that at the end of the day benefits our customers. We have completely revamped our community engagement program, and one of the things that we're trying this year as part of the RAC process on generation planning is we're hosting a series of open houses, right? So rather than do a public input session where me and our board sit up here and there's a microphone and you hear a presentation from us and then you give us an hour worth of your mind. We're actually we just like we're doing here, we have tables set up and we have information and we're trying to put out as much information as we possibly can so we can enter a dialogue and get real feedback. I do better one-on-one with people than being on WebExes or stuff like that. So I was like, hey, let's just host a 2-hour town hall and invite folks into the CPS Energy building and let's educate them on things and get their feedback. So we're trying some new things that I think reflect a true public kind of input gathering process. And when we present all of the information to the board, the RAC's recommendation, the survey work that we've been doing, the input we've gotten from what do you call them, not marketing sessions, but the focus groups that we do, in addition to the RAC's input, we're going to hand that to our board in an unsolicited, kind of unfettered, unchanged manner and say, hey, here's all the feedback we got from the community, here's the RAC's recommendation, here's our recommendation, board members do your thing. And I think that's going to move us in a better place pretty quickly.
I just want to do a
I
quick
got
time check. Sorry.
I've got a microphone, so is it okay with?
Sure. I just wanted to do a quick time check. We have about 5 minutes left, so we'll do, I know y'all have been patiently waiting, so we'll do Meredith and Molly. And then we have a closing statement from Liliana. Is she here? Okay, awesome. So be ready in like a couple minutes. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make this as quick and as fast as possible, but I realize that I'm lifting up some issues that are much deeper and take time. I think one of the things that you've inherited has to do with the fact that the business model at CPS has been backwards looking. And we've got to a stage where we can't afford to keep doing it that way. We have to be much more forward-looking. That's a little bit scarier, but I think that we should have multiple ways by which we are accomplishing the next resources. And so I think that one of the things that's really good about the new resource opportunities is that they don't require putting vast amounts of money into a building and an apparatus that you have to take years and years and years to pay for and so forth. A lot of what we can do right now is much more likely to be effective, and especially I'm talking about developing microgrids in the city as a way of creating a much more resilient way of handling our electricity. And some of that's going on already. For example, the students at Trinity are starting to talk about having a campus-wide microgrid like they have at the University of Texas in Austin. And if we have more and more of those kinds of things happening, it would be the kind of old-fashioned, well, let's throw X billion of dollars onto a plant, but it's something that could be done quickly, could be motivated quickly, and the more we get involved in that, and I noticed that the speaker who was talking to is it called the Brattle Company? That was informing he has all kinds of really good data about the extent to which what they call prosumers, in other words, the people who are both producing electricity and are consuming electricity. There's one of our best assets to go forward, and we'll have more renewable energy that way quickly.
I'll just say one thing really quickly, because I don't know if there's any other questions, but yes, Dr. McGuire, I agree with you. We've got to upgrade our computer systems, which I've spent a lot of time talking about. It's going to be a hundreds of millions of dollar project because right now I know where the solar is on my distribution network. I can't see it, and I can't send a signal and pay customers for that generation when I need it. And upgrading our systems will allow us to get on the other side of where we are today, and I can actually use that as a power plant so I don't have to build. I'm with you. I don't want to have to build the power plant and shut it down early again. Don't want to put our customers in that position, but technology is going to have to help us get there. We're talking about microgrids with the military. We're talking about microgrids with saws. I met with the developer last week who's talking about doing a microgridded subdivision community on the south side of town. How fantastic is that? So I'm with you. We're on board with figuring out how to get microgrids as part of our generation, resource strategy. But it's going to require systems that we don't have in place today that we're working really hard to figure out right now. So I agree with you 100%. I think it's a great opportunity.
And if I could just add something very quickly onto that, another version of that same technology will allow us to do something else that is similar to what you were talking about. We typically think of energy storage as these massive, hundreds of millions of dollars of battery projects. But the fact is, in a couple of years, we're going to have a distributed storage network around San Antonio in our electric vehicles. And if we have the technology to take advantage of those as distributed energy storage, that's another resource that we have available in just the next couple of years.
All right, time for one more question. Molly, actually, I want to check and see, Hannah, is that?
Yeah.
Did I get your name right? I thought I recognized you. Yeah. I know you had a question. You did get a chance to.
Just based on what you said, Adrian and Rudy, I'm like, my body's having like these intuitions. I'm having a hard time kind of listening. I want to ask for your all's help. Adrian, I feel like you're alluding to some blocks. Like there's this great idea, there's opportunities, there's finance support, but there are like these blocks. So is there like an elephant in the room? Like there's certain people on the board, because I feel like Rudy demonstrates some interest, but then I keep hearing, oh, but my board, they're working really hard on it. So I'm like, trying to have some compassion. Is Rudy in between a rock and a hard place? At times it only has certain kind of decision-making power. I want to get insight from the ground, maybe Chris a little bit, and then if Rudy would like to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly would not and could not identify individuals, but I will say that the elephant in the room in Texas is the fossil fuel industry, which has almost complete control over decision making in the state right now.
Definitely the fossil fuel industry, but also to a lot of these renewable energies, they come with a price tag. So we're talking about microgrids. That is pretty expensive, and I'm learning it is so because at Southwest Workers Union, we are in the beginning phases of establishing a resilience hub on the east side. And so Southwest Workers Union would transform into a resilience hub, and with that we want to be able to provide a microgrid so that we can provide energy in the time of need to our neighbors. That price tag is in the millions of dollars, and so we are an organization that runs on a budget of less than $1 million annually, and so there are opportunities we may not be well connected to, and pieces like the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, they have good components, but ultimately they are a product of the fossil fuel industry, and elected leaders who are either Republican or Democrat who do not serve our interests in actuality. And so in order for a just transition to kick off, we need a more robust community participation, community plan. We're on the ground, it's really difficult. Our communities are faced with so many obstacles and burdens that thinking about the climate crisis may not be on the front of their mind, but it's something that they experience every day. Those conversations are long conversations. They take so much time and effort, and we just don't have the resources and the capacity and the money to be able to make gains and to have pieces like microgrids and electric cars. Those are things that many of us will never be able to afford, solar panels. And so we're hoping, Southwest Workers Union and myself, that we can tackle pieces in a just transition, pieces of a regenerative economy, that we could find alternative ways to have income and to take care of ourselves so that we could build power ourselves, power ourselves. I don't think in the state we have the right to produce our own power, and I think that is something that in our future we really do want to attain.
Yeah, and something that I learned from working at Rewired America is that the fossil-free future that we want looks like a 100% clean energy grid and appliances that run on that clean energy. And around the country, there's a lot of people who are already on board with this and moving local governments and state governments to do it so that it can be like a possibility. Like Anako said, electric vehicles are not affordable, so that's where the government has to step in and provide tax incentives or rebates or whatever to make it more affordable for more people. And so what we need here is more people who are on that train and willing to organize and do the things that we need to do. So if you're here, thank you, and then go home and go talk to whoever you can and Google things together. Google what a heat pump is, or what a microgrid is, or what community solar is, so that we can all start to have momentum for these things to happen.
Join us for public comment at the next Rate Advisory Committee meeting this Thursday, 3 p.m. You can sign up for public comment Friday before 1 p.m. Right?
I've never seen Reed turn anybody away, so. Let me just say this. My board right now has been supportive of the work that we're trying to do I'm looking towards the future. I don't want to look back. I want to make the decision we need to make, and I want to be the utility company that our customers want to be, and they've been supportive of that. We have limits. Our customers, the only money that we have coming in outside of potential funding opportunities at the federal level is from our customers. So I don't have unlimited resources. I have to make the smart decisions with the dollars I have that move us in the right direction. Talked about battery, storage in general. All for storage. We're actually going to make some sizable investments in storage that make our renewables more valuable, and dispatchable potentially over the long term. But you kind of got to make step progress as we go. So, and to the extent any of these decisions require rate support, where we have to ask for more, resources from our customers, I got to go to city council for that. So I'm kind of big on just kind of talking through the process, because, I think in the past, the CEO doesn't have quite as much authority as everybody gives us credit for. I've got a board that I have to, take my signals from, present. They give me policy direction, and then I got to go, and prove my case up to the city council. And that's the great thing about a community-owned utility. The community decides whether they agree with the direction that we're taking the utility. I think we're getting on a better path than maybe we've been on in the past. It's a lot of hard work, but you're here. This is probably more folks that I've seen in a community event like this in a while. So, and I know you're here on your time. Thank you for taking time to listen. to what I have to say, and I appreciate my panelists today. We're doing the best, we're trying the best we can to get there. So I appreciate y'all's continued input and patience, and I think together we're gonna make some progress here.
I'm really sorry, I have a hard stop because I have a sick 3-year-old at home being cared for by a 14-year-old. So those of y'all that have questions still, maybe just after we break formally, just to continue the conversation that way. I did want to invite Mediana at this time to kind of close us out with a statement. Thank you.
Can I say something really quick? We are a community-owned utility, but when the community came together to challenge the structure of CPS Energy in our fight to gain public control of our utility, specifically the Board of Trustees, we were met with a lawsuit after working really hard during the pandemic when there was not even a vaccine, right? And a lot of us didn't even know it was the beginning phases of COVID. We gained and we got 16,000 petition signatures of residential ratepayers who said they wanted structural changes. CPS and the city of San Antonio went behind our backs and sued us, and that lawsuit is still in court. And so we are a public utility to a certain extent, and that is the truth.
Hi, y'all. My name is Lillian White. I'm an educator and a member of Climate Justice San Antonio. I want to close this program out first by thanking all of y'all for being here. I know it's been a really long day for many of us, and your dedication is sincerely appreciated. Secondly, I want to share some great relevant news that I recently read about. The coal-powered plant in Northwest Texas is going to be retired by 2028 and replaced with renewables. This switch is estimated to save their customers in Texas and New Mexico more than $70 million. I want to rephrase that. A utility provider more than 4 times the size of CPS Energy just committed to switching to renewable energy, and in the process will save their customers tens of millions of dollars. Y'all's presence and input here, in addition to the current results of CPS Energy's recently released Generation Planning Survey, show that the people of San Antonio want the same. And by the same, I mean we want system reliability, we want affordability, and we want environmental sustainability. According to the most recent survey results, San Antonians consider these to be the 3 most important objectives and how CPS Energy should plan to direct the future of powering San Antonio. I vehemently hope that CPS Energy is sincere in their resolve to follow our wishes. Because right now, when I think of CPS Energy and system reliability in the same sentence, I grieve for the victims of Storm Uri. Right now, when I think of CPS Energy and affordability, I think of the inequitable rate structure that favors higher income, higher usage customers. Right now, when I think of CPS Energy and environmental sustainability, I don't. But I do have faith in people power, and I hope that these town halls and outreach efforts are a sign that CPS Energy will follow the direction that the people have chosen and light the way to a clean, affordable, and sustainable future in San Antonio. Thank y'all again for taking the time to show up, keep speaking up, keep showing up, and we will always appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight at the end of a long day. Please feel free to continue conversation. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.